name is Chris Fitzgerald, and welcome to the second video installment of the Jazz Bass Technique series. As improvising musicians, we face a fundamental dilemma every time we play. The nature of the dilemma is this: we have only one mind, one stream of conscious attention to focus on any given task at hand, and yet the act of improvisation asks that we execute two separate and distinct skill sets simultaneously. First, it asks that we conceive of a musical line or idea that we consider to be worth playing. Second, it asks that we be able to technically execute that idea or line on our instrument. The balance between these two facets of improvisation is incredibly important because of the way they are interrelated. The more attention and energy you have to focus on the execution side, the less focus you have to give to the conception side. And I think if you ask most improvisers, they would tell you that in an ideal world, they would prefer to focus most of their attention on the conception side of things. For this reason, it makes sense for players to practice systematically in advance all the technical ideas and technical hurdles that they might run into in the act of improvisation, so that when their ideas reach the execution stage, they will have already practiced them beforehand. In this installment of the series, entitled Permutations, we'll explore a systematic way of practicing right-hand articulations for jazz bass. The issue of systematic right-hand articulation practice can be broken down into two basic spheres: finger combinations and patterns, and beat divisions. Let's start with the finger combinations. If finger combinations were to be described as a deck of cards, that deck would contain only four basic cards. The first card would be playing with the index finger alone, and it would be abbreviated I. The second card would be playing with the middle finger alone, abbreviated M. The third card would be alternation of the index and middle fingers leading with the index, IM, and the fourth card would be alternation of the middle and index fingers leading with the middle finger, MI. At this point, the distinction between leading with the index and leading with the middle might seem a little spurious, but I think it will make a lot more sense when we get to the concept of beat divisions, which we will do shortly. In addition to the four basic cards, the deck also contains a joker, and the joker is the use of the ring finger of the right hand. Before we even get into that technique, it's worth noting that many great bassists can get through their entire career without ever using the ring finger of the right hand extensively. But I'd like to include it here for those who might be interested in because it fits the system so well. Even when you use the ring finger, it's probably best saved for advanced players. But if you were to use the ring finger, that joker card would include the pattern RMI. And of course, this pattern is most associated with the late great Danish bassist Niels Henning Ørsted Pedersen. Before we begin with examples and close-ups of the finger patterns at work, we should take a step back just for a moment and look at the way that the middle finger and the ring finger would be played on the bass according to our horizontal technique that we set out in the last video. For the middle finger, obviously you can't get as much flesh on the string as you could with the index finger because the index finger is in the way. But what we're going to try to do with the middle finger is to keep the hand in this sort of horizontal position, use the finger as just an extension of the arm, and play with it like this. Again, as much flesh as the anatomy allows to get on the string. We drag it across the fingerboard in exactly the same way, and it looks like this. Likewise with the ring finger. it has two fingers in the way, and yet you're trying to get as much flesh on the string as possible. You're still not trying to move the finger independently, and it looks like this. Now that we're in a close-up shot, we can examine the finger combinations in closer visual detail and also play them along systematically from one to the next with a metronome, which will help us eventually introduce our beat divisions. So to help us do this, I'm going to set the metronome on at 60, and I'm going to go through each of the finger combinations in order: I, M, 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 I, M, I, M, M, I, M, I, and then R, M, I, R, M, I. So we'll start with I. Next we move on to the eighth note division, and at the eighth note division things start to get very interesting, because at the eighth note division we're no longer going to be doing a right arm downstroke with every note that we play. We're going to divide our right arm downstroke along with the beat divisions as we go, so that when we play eighth notes it's going to be a downstroke followed by an upstroke on each beat. So it looks like this. And so we're going to go through the 5 permutations at the eighth note level. I. M, 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 M. I, M, I, M. It's at this eighth note level where the distinction between leading with the middle finger on a 2-note pattern or leading with the index finger starts to take on some meaning. Great jazz teachers like Rufus Reid talk sometimes about the motion of turning a key or turning a doorknob. And what they mean by that is that the right hand, when plucking, most naturally moves in a clockwise manner. Think of throwing a ball, turning a doorknob, or turning a key, so that when you accent at the bottom of that motion. So I believe it's a lot more natural to lead when the accent makes a difference, to lead with the middle finger, which puts gravity on the accent. M, I. Although you certainly can play I, M. I think the MI is a little bit more natural. Next we'll move on to the triplet level, and we'll go through all the permutations. M, there's not much difference between leading with the middle or leading with the index because the 3-note pattern crosses the patterns over onto each other. Next we move on to 16th notes. I, M, 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 M. I, M, I, M. M, I, M, I. And R, M, I, R, M, I. So at this point, we've practiced all of the permutations. We've practiced every finger combination against every beat division. And this sort of systematic practice is a great way to prepare yourself for the sorts of demands that your conception will throw your way in the normal improvisation process. But practicing this way for that reason is only the beginning of the story for beat divisions, because by practicing beat divisions, what you're really practicing is accent patterns. And accent patterns can be a great way to help you play more in a more relaxed way at tempos. If you do the math, by practicing eighth notes at 60, it's the same as practicing quarter notes at 120. By playing triplet eighths at 60, it's the same as playing quarter notes at 180. By playing 16th notes at 60, it's the same as playing quarter notes at 240. And 240 is a very common jazz sort of medium up-tempo. So since we're almost out of time, I'd like to conclude this episode with an example which shows how systematically spreading out the accent patterns will also systematically smooth out and relax the feel, both the physical feel and the sonic feel of the walking line. So I'd like to play a chorus of rhythm changes, this walking line of rhythm changes at 240. And in the first 8 bars, I'm going to play a right arm downstroke on every beat. In the second 8 bars, I'll play a right arm downstroke only every other beat. On the bridge, I'll play a right arm downstroke only every third beat. And on the last A section, I'll play a right arm downstroke only on the downbeat of each measure. And I think what you'll probably hear, what I always hear when I do this, is that the feel starts being very tight and very tense. And by the time you get to the last A, it feels very, very relaxed. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and please tune in next time. Rhythm changes 4 ways.